There is a major change that is needed like now for the Big 12 Conference, and I want to share it with you here. I'm Pete Mundo. We're Heartland College Sports, and we cover the Big 12. We're glad that you're here, as always, as a part of the show. If you're just joining us, make sure you're subscribed. Hit that thumbs up and like button on the show, and we so appreciate you doing that. Or drop that 5-star rating and review on the podcast. So I went to the Big 12 women's basketball tournament on Thursday, and I was there as a chaperone with my 6-year-old daughter's schoolmates, and it was great. We had an awesome time. I have that memory forever. I'm glad I did it, and it was absolutely fantastic. But for the Big 12, it was terrible. So they're now playing the Big 12 women's tournament at T-Mobile Center in Kansas City, Missouri, which, if you're from the area, you know that it's the main arena in Kansas City. If you're not from the area, now you know it's the main arena in Kansas City. This started a couple of years ago. Prior to that, what would happen is the Big 12 men's tournament would be played at this T-Mobile arena, and the women would play about 2 blocks over at the Municipal Auditorium. Now, Municipal Auditorium is an old kind of dumpy arena. Actually, it's beautiful on the inside, but it just hasn't been kept up. There's not a lot that gets done in that building in Kansas City. So a couple of years ago, the Big 12 said, here's what we're going to do. We want the women to have better facilities, so we are going to put the Big 12 women's tournament a week earlier in the T-Mobile Center. So the women go this week, the men go next week. And it was a nice thought. I wasn't for it at the time, but it was a nice thought. Now I go down there on Thursday and I watch K-State play UCF. So K-State, that's one of the 3-4 closest teams to Kansas City in the entire Big 12. It's a ghost town. They've got the top upper deck kind of, blocked off with the curtains. The lower deck was empty. If it wasn't for give or take 1,000 school kids who were there today, the place would have been a ghost town. There was not a single Kansas State student in sight. It was a bunch of older alums from Kansas State coming to watch some basketball. That's it. That's who it was. It was 11 a.m. on a Thursday, and it was a week before the men's tournament. It was dead. And that sucks. I'm not sitting here saying that's a good thing. It's not. But what the Big 12 needs to do is go back to the way it was. Put the women at Municipal Auditorium, put the men at T-Mobile, because what that allowed the fan base to do is basically bounce back and forth. If you were a K-State fan, you could watch the men's game at this time, the women's game at that time. It wasn't always perfect, but you had options. You had a lot of people coming to Kansas City next week, and they could watch men's basketball and women's basketball. This is stunting the growth for the women's basketball game is what this is doing. It's not good for the game. Now, I know you might say, but the facilities stink. It's a basketball court. And guess what? Ask anyone who's played sports at any level, and I'm pretty sure they'd take a bigger fan base. They would take growing the game. They would take the moments of having the game on the line in front of a bigger crowd than they would a nicer locker room to change in with 30 people watching me play. Anyone who's got any competitive bone in their body would pick that. And it would be much better for the game at this point as well if they did it that way. I don't understand. It's admirable to want to get the women into better facilities, but not at the risk of stunting the growth of the game. I mean, I'm sitting here saying this as the father of 3 daughters. It's not that I don't want the women to have good facilities. But at some point, you got to look at this and you got to say, what actually makes sense for the sport? What actually makes sense for growing Big 12 women's basketball? There will be tens of thousands of people in Kansas City next week for the men's tournament. If you had the women's game, heck, even if you're like, let's say you came into town as a Utah fan, right? You might be able to catch a Utah women's game and then a Utah men's game back-to-back days or same days if they overlap, whatever it might be. You're not coming in for the women's tournament this week. You're not. I'm just using that fan base as an example. I don't think we're getting a lot of Utah fans next week either, but you get the point. Heck, if you're, let's say you're a Iowa State fan, You come down to Kansas City, Hilton South. Iowa State fans love coming down here. You may watch Iowa State women. You may obviously watch Iowa State men. You may also catch another women's game just for the sake of it. It might be the better game at a certain point in the week. That's how the Big 12 should have been thinking. And to be clear, this is not Brett Yormark's fault. This was at the end of Bob Bowlesby's tenure as the Big 12 commissioner. They announced this in 2022, and Bowlesby was still the commissioner at that time. So I'm not like ragging on Bowlesby, but it's not working, so just change it back. Change it back to the way it was. And if any Big 12 coach is going to scoff at that, if any Big 12 women's coach is going to say this is a bad idea, I would challenge them as to why. Tell me why you don't think this is a good idea to get more eyeballs on your team and on your product. And yes, in a perfect world, you could overlap these games in the same facility at T-Mobile. You can't. So get over it. It's not like a knock on anybody. It's just you got to face the reality of the situation. No one can come, or most people, I should say, are not going to spend 2 straight weeks in Kansas City at a time of year when, listen, the weather's hit or miss. We had a blizzard 2 nights ago. It's going to be 72 degrees on Monday or Tuesday. So you're not going to spend 2 weeks here if you're from out of town. You're just not going to do it. 1, you don't want to. 2, it's a lot of money to do that. So you get to instead put the women in, yes, a lesser facility. And the only reason, let's be clear here too, the only reason you're doing that is because that's what the market dictates. Municipal's a smaller arena. T-Mobile's a bigger arena. More people are going to watch the men. That's a fact. The marketplace is never wrong. It isn't. The market's always right. It's cliche, but it's true. The market is always right. If the women had a bigger draw, I'd say put them in T-Mobile. You would make more money if you were the Big 12, but that's not going to happen. So it's not like the women are in the municipal auditorium, the lesser arena, because, well, you know, we want to put the women in the lesser arena. It's just a pure ticket play. It's a money play. That's all it is. So do that. And then here's what I would do if I'm the Big 12. They've got the contract in Kansas City, I think, for the next, I want to say 6 or 7 years. They're going to have the Big 12 tournament in Kansas City, Missouri. Kansas City loves this tournament. I can tell you that firsthand. If they want to extend with Kansas City, and I hope that they will, there are a lot of reasons to like how this town puts on this tournament for the Big 12. They get to own this town, own the arena, own everything around the arena, power and light district, the whole 9 yards. Then what they should say is, we will re-up with Kansas City. We need some improvements to Municipal Auditorium. Nothing crazy. Don't break the bank on me here. But we need some improvements to what's going on at Municipal Auditorium. That has to happen for us to extend the contract. And I guarantee you that Kansas City, Missouri would say, sure, let's do it. Where do we sign? Because this is a big week, or next week's a big week. I mean, today was nothing. I was down there. Power and Light didn't have anyone in it. Like, not a single person walking around Power and Light. No music, no pep rallies, no nothing. It was dead. There's no point. Let the women enjoy all that next week has to offer for the Big 12, which is a fantastic week for the city. There's just energy. There's juice. Everything's going right. Instead, I mean, it feels like they're playing exhibition games in Anchorage, Alaska. There's nothing going on. So move it back to help the women's game, to grow the women's game. I mean, yes, I had a great time taking my 6-year-old down there on a field trip, but let's be honest. One of the reasons they're doing field trips for this is because they got to fill the arena. I paid $2.50 for my ticket today. It was actually a $2 ticket. It was 50 cents with the processing fee. I mean, I want to pay at least $10. I want to feel like I'm honoring what I'm about to watch. $2.50? It's just, they've got to get it back. And Yormark can change that for next season if he wants to. There's no doubt about it. He can change that if he wants to. Now, the other thing I keep hearing as well, all the other women's tournaments are this week for the Power Four. I don't care. I don't care what the SEC is doing. I don't care what the Big Ten. I don't care about the ACC. The Big 12 had a very unique setup, and it worked well for this conference. With these two sports, men's and women's basketball, playing the same week, within 2 blocks of each other in Kansas City. It worked well for everybody. I don't care what the SEC is doing. They're playing in no man's land as well. Maybe I should say no women's land. But you get the point. They're all playing in empty arenas. The Big 12 didn't have that for a long time. They at least would get a decent crowd over at Municipal Auditorium, so get back to it. I'm Pete Mundo, Heartland College Sports. We cover the Big 12. We are glad that you are here on the show. So before I continue and get your questions in right now, I'm doing this live on the fly. Get your questions in on Facebook and on YouTube right now. I will answer them, mailbag, whatever you want. Basketball, football, throw it at me. We'll cover it. We'll take it. But I do want to ask you or share this with you guys because I got this little bit of news today. Hang on here. I want to find it. You're going to like it. Scrolling through my phone. Where is it? I just saw it here earlier. Hang on one sec. Here we go. All right. Starting today for the next 6 days, we have a 15% discount on everything in the Heartland College Sports shop. 6 days, 15% off. So, yes, that means this shirt, the SEC, undefeated in hypothetical games, T-shirt. That means the Heartland College Sports hoodie. All right, we're going to be giving some of this away as well. That means for Tech fans, let's go. Tortilla tosser. Let's rock, baby. All of that 15% off. All right, that's what's going to be happening right now in the shop. I will link to it in the channel. And also you can find it at heartlandcollegesports.com. Just click on the shop tab at the very top. We appreciate all your guys' support. Thanks so much for being here and being a part of the show. Get those questions in right now. We'll get to it. We got the Big 12 men's basketball regular season wrapping up this weekend, and it's all about seeding. That's it. It's all about seeding right now. Houston has the Big 12 tournament obviously locked up. They won the regular season title this week, and now you're just looking at these games and saying, okay, what matters for seeding next week in Kansas City? That's what it's all about right now. Seeding for the Big 12 tournament. We got this question from Mr. Big Texco. Who's your men's pick to win the Big 12 tournament? I'll tell you what, it is very hard right now to bet against Houston. You would have to make a very compelling case to bet against Houston to win the Big 12 championship coming up next week in Kansas City. Now, you can make the case, I think, for a couple of teams. You can make the case for Iowa State because they just play well in Kansas City. It's Hilton South. They show up. They get it rocked out. But Iowa State's not playing well. Iowa State's playing its worst basketball in probably a month and a half or so. They've lost 3 of 4. That BYU game, I know, was a heartbreaker and a nail-biter. But, you know, when you lose to Oklahoma State, they got that Houston loss. They go to Kansas State this weekend. If they can get a really good win at K-State, who's frankly not playing for anything right now, you'll feel better about them next week. And then something about Kansas City, they just turn it on when they get down here. But the case right now is probably Houston. And outside of that, I mean, you're really stretching. I don't know which team I would sit there and say. I mean, I like Texas Tech. Would I say Texas Tech is like the team I'm looking at to win the Big 12 tournament next week? I'm not. It's nothing against them. I'm just not going to do it. It seems like that they don't seem to play their best in Kansas City. That's just my hunch watching them the last few years. They're playing pretty well right now. They've won 3 of their last 5, but they're not lights out. I mean, BYU is arguably playing some of the best basketball in the Big 12. What have they won, like 6 or 7 straight? So they're maybe the hottest team in the conference this side of Houston. But I don't know. BYU is a much better home team than they are on the road. So I would lean towards Houston and say, somebody else show me something here. I don't think Arizona is going to walk in here in its first year and win in Kansas City. I don't see that happening. And outside of that, who are you going to make the argument for right now? You might say, well, it's Kansas. It's their backyard. They always show up. Kansas is not winning this thing. I mean, if Kansas gets to the semifinals, I might be surprised based on how KU is playing right now. So it's hard to bet against Houston going into next week. Jonathan says, I'm a Houston fan. I think Tech or Iowa State is going to win it. I would say why? I mean, I understand if you're a Houston fan, you're probably like, hey, you know what? Whatever. We don't need it. Hopefully we got our 1 seed locked up. If we get to probably the semifinals, we'll be fine for Selection Sunday. I get it. I understand that. But listen, you guys are in a very good spot to win this thing right now. Pete, can you ask a certain person in KCMO next Thursday to make improvements to Municipal Auditorium? I think I know who you're talking about there, KCSGE. That would be my old pal, Quentin Lucas, the mayor of Kansas City, who comes on my KCMO Talk Radio morning show every Thursday. Well, I think we can fit that in next week, my man. It will be Big 12 tournament week, so we will talk to him about a lot of things. Here's the thing. I want that answer from the mayor in Kansas City to take like 30 seconds. I don't want to waste 2 minutes on that. Can he answer that question in 30 seconds? He should be able to, but he's very good at making that a 2-minute answer. So I've got to pick and choose my spots, as you know. Stormy Cyclone says, get used to power and light. Town is across of that, and Titletown in Green Bay. Okay? Get used to the power and light. Well, I mean, what do you mean get used to it? We know that Iowa State fans show up big time. John Lewis, I'm running the Garmin KC Marathon in October. Look forward to enjoying all the things the city has to offer. John, hit me up. Drop me an email, Pete Mundo at heartlandcollegesports.com. I will give you all the things you got to do when you come to town, buddy. I'm happy to do it. And good luck training for it, brother. Good luck training for it. That's I'm a former runner myself, but I've never done a marathon. I'm not sure I ever will do a marathon. All right, Mr. Monkey, what's the major mistake? Well, I know that some of you are just joining us live. The major mistake for the Big 12 is having the women's basketball tournament the week before the men's basketball tournament. You can restart the show to find out why, but it has not worked out for the Big 12 to have the women's basketball tournament this week and the men's basketball tournament next week. It is not a good display of the women's game. I think it's unfair to the women. It's not helping them grow the game. So that's what they've got to change. They've only been doing this for a couple of years, but I was down there on Thursday chaperoning my kindergarten daughter's class trip, and I was like, this has so much more potential. It was better at Municipal. The place was dead outside of about 1,000 kids from different schools around Kansas City screaming their heads off, and it's nice to have a fun field trip, but I really think that we can do better as a conference. And yes, as a city as well. We can do better. There's no doubt in my mind. Pete Mundo on Heartland College Sports. Great to have you guys here. Thank you, as always, for being a part of the show. Pete, let's rotate the Big 12 tournament. Phoenix and Kansas City. At least I'm not hearing Vegas. If the Big 12 does bouncing around, all right, what I would do is bounce it between... Here's what I would do. Orlando, Dallas, Phoenix, Kansas City. If they wanted to bounce it around through 4 cities across the Big 12 footprint, those are my 4. Kansas City, Orlando, Dallas, Phoenix. That's what I would do. Not doing Vegas, all right? Not doing that. We're not going west of the Big 12 to go play the Big 12 tournament. That's why Big 12 Media Days was always a dumb idea out there. I'm glad they got rid of that. Orlando, yes, is home of UCF, but listen, it's a great spot. It's a great March trip, spring break, Big 12 tournament, getting the action. Easy place to fly into and out of from most places in the country, thanks to Disney World. Dallas, Big 12 headquarters, Kansas City. For obvious reasons, it's been a big home run. That's what I would do with the Big 12 tournament if you're going to take it away from Kansas City. 535 fit Vegas, the best place for a tournament. No, it's not. There's like a million things going on in Vegas. There's multiple basketball tournaments going on in Vegas. It's not. Okay, stop with the hard-ons for Vegas. I don't understand it. You want to go to Vegas to bet on games? Go to Vegas to bet on games. Watch it at a sports book. Go with the boys. Have a great time. The Big 12 has no business being in Las Vegas. None. I don't know where this is coming from, but it's ridiculous. So there's just, but there's going to be a lot to talk about. We are going to be, of course, all over it at heartlandcollegesports.com. We hope that you'll be joining us, and make sure that you sign up for the forums. They're free on the website. Great way to interact with fellow Big 12 fans, and we would love to see you there. I'm Pete Mundo. Hit that subscribe button on the podcast and on YouTube. Make sure that you are subscribed, and we will talk to you guys soon. Have a great day. I'm Pete Mundo. Go Big 12. Take care.